tailored to country unique context and contain a vision as well as goals and tangible implementable action points. If you look at this infographic that was developed by Chatham House, this really shows that just recently there have been so many national circular economy roadmaps or strategies or action plans. They're called the same, have been launched. So if you see the green color, they are the ones that are under development. And if you see the yellow color, they're the countries that have committed or are about to start their national circular economy roadmaps. In fact, we also showed this infographic during the Global Roadmap Initiative presentation that we did at the World Circular Economy Forum in Kigali. Why do we need circular economy metrics? Circular economy metrics play a crucial role in the development and implementation of CE roadmaps. For governments, metrics allow policymakers to evaluate the effects of policies. In industry and wider society, metrics raise awareness where individuals come into contact with reporting. And for business leaders, metrics aim to make the case for a circular economy, encouraging individuals to take action. Understanding the reasons behind using CE metrics can also help us tailor our indicator choices towards these goals, including metrics on value added and growing markets on top of tracking the progress of CE policies. It is tempting to conceptualize the circular economy as purely a series of processes for industry and consumer goods, but it is much more than that. The circular economy integrates clean energy, waste, environment, biological cascading, and general policy making to create a system change. Circular economy roadmaps can therefore strive to include metrics for all aspects of the circular economy to encourage balanced growth of circular economy indicators. In case of a life cycle of metric life cycle can help to the development of metrics overall. The following graph developed by the UNECE OECD metric guidelines into a multi-stage life cycle to encapsulate all aspects of metrics generation. In fact, this was also discussed at the World Circular Economy Forum in Helsinki last week. Therefore, it is crucial for states to build functional metric pipelines that achieve all the goals of circular economy roadmaps, so no areas are left behind. Therefore, metrics must first be defined at the national level. As a national circular economy roadmap, all metrics must start at the national level by definition. This is the first input into the metrics lifecycle. Second, the metrics should undergo feasibility checks to ensure that metrics are realistic, measurable, and observable in specific national and regional situations. Third, granular detail is a critical part of the metric lifecycle. Here, metrics evolve from headline definitions to a well-developed, mutually exclusive, cumulative, exhaustive metrics. Metrics are also translated into local landscapes here, adding granularity within the limits of local contexts. Fourth, metrics are collected at the local and national level, ready for analysis. Data must be cleaned, processed, and analyzed for insights. Metrics are communicated to the public, private sector leaders, and government officials, which is very important with good communication. And finally, metrics are cycled back to inform roadmap revisions, revealing where policies are effective and where there are still policy gaps for the circular economy transition. What are the lessons for the metric life cycle? The metrics life cycle reveals many lessons we must learn for generating a metrics framework for circular economy roadmaps. This slide highlights some of the common pain points and how we can avoid them. What we have to first define what is a national level definition. To build a metrics framework that functions across all stages, from ideation to execution, involvement of statisticians through the process is vital. If there is capacity, then states should strive to designate responsibility for circular economy metrics to an impartial national statistics body. In terms of guiding principles, high-level metric definition should aim to incorporate the circular economy conceptual framework already mentioned. Second, feasibility checks. In ensuring that metrics are both feasible and functional, states should aim to incorporate stakeholders at this stage. This will guide metric development towards metrics that can be measured, collected, and attach them to reasonable goals. If feasibility check fails, metrics can be redefined in the short term, but states should look to develop data capabilities in the long term. Granular details, this stage adds disaggregated data to the metrics lifecycle, providing greater options for analysis. Further stakeholder engagement here also encourages local level metrics that are still realistic. Collection, where delegation to a national statistic body is not possible, states must ensure that capacity building is in place for data collection to ensure consistency across the national and subnational areas. This also talks about a lot about decentralization of data collection. Assigning discrete responsibilities to individuals or government departments is also crucial here to ensure data is actually collected and correctly collected. Analysis, transparency in collection and analysis method will allow transferability and ensure that data is comparable across years, making sure that roadmaps support long-term monitoring. Communication, connecting communication to the vision developed at the national level is key to ensuring public understanding of policy goals. Where required in both communicators and the public, capacity building or education could be useful. Revisions should be built into monitoring mandates of roadmaps, so there is a pre-made pipeline for metrics to be used going forward. These are basically the 7 lessons you have to keep in mind while developing the metrics. What is the current trend on international roadmaps? If we look at we did an analysis of around of a few circular economy roadmaps, and we saw that the progression has happened over a period of time. If you see very carefully that the first ones, looking at Japan and Philippines, focused really on waste management, and if you look at the more recent one, Ireland, Netherlands, Czech Republic, and China, they are more comprehensive. The EU and the states, in that case, have taken inspiration from also the circular economy action plan, which extends this much further, providing a comprehensive set of sectors, including electronics, batteries, packaging, plastics, textiles. So where required, states must also focus on areas such as tourism, where they are heavily dependent on tourism as a means for economic livelihood. Then we also looked at what are the indicators that have been used in these circular economy roadmaps, and it is very interesting to note here that out in 11 of the roadmaps we saw recycling rate as being the most sorted indicators and metrics, and there is, while we always talk about that circular economy in reality is about upstream change, recycling is important, but it is about reducing waste at the outset. And by ensuring if that recycling rate is increased, we are not actually looking at how waste reduction can happen. So while recycling is important, we still have not found indicators that actually show that loops are closed, or there is upstream change, there is upstream design change that is happening. So this must be really kept in mind while creating new indicators for the new roadmaps, that we need to change. We need to change the way we define metrics through upstream innovation and upstream changes. If we also look at these set of indicators and metrics in these countries, we can see that there are some countries that have very limited quantified goals and metrics. Then there are some that like Austria, China, Chile, Germany, Japan, that have metrics defined very well. But then there are ones that have metrics defined well, but also has robust monitoring, such as Austria, China, Chile, Colombia, Germany, Netherlands, and Spain. So we can very well see that there is a complete breadth of changes from one country to another in terms of their methodology and also the way they have defined their metrics. in case of, so that's why we can see that in some of the if you can see from on the left side, there are some of the countries that have actually zero metrics defined in their circular economy roadmaps, and there are other countries such as Slovenia, Germany, Slovakia, Portugal, and the Netherlands that have around 25 to 52 metrics in each of their circular economy roadmaps. So this really shares that we are all developing up in a very different manner, and circular economy is actually a global problem. So finding solutions by developing different indicators at different levels. So we need to have some kind of a common consensus on circular economy indicators as we move forward. So in looking forward, many roadmaps have chosen to develop innovation circular economy solutions in their texts to help public and industry leaders to visualize the circular economy. These focus on government, industry, infrastructure, consumer, and financial ecosystems shows how economic system, business models, ownership models, finance models, and consumer preference could change over time during the circular economy transition. This could, however, become more concrete in the future by using metrics to define the impact of these innovative guidelines and case studies. We also, when we look at national roadmaps, we also have to look at citywide roadmap, being Paris being the first roadmap, having Paris, which was a Paris Circular Economy Plan in 2017. Although this is yet to be seen in national roadmaps, city roadmaps have been including innovation metrics in their indicator metrics. In fact, Paris Circular Economy Plan was the first roadmap that also included societal and economic indicators to measure the progress, and they also included end of life recovery and team innovation and design changes in their circular economy. There were also clear mention of pilot projects, that there were many indicators covering policy steps, quantity of reused materials, number of actors involved in the pilots for the circular economy. So everything was very detailed that we should kind of look at as one of the best practices. So what are the lessons for indicators content? From these trends and insights, we can extract some lessons for policymakers on the content of indicators. Firstly, policymakers should redirect metric focus to include upstream circular practices alongside downstream based metrics. Indicators on green jobs and green procurement add value to metrics, allowing governments to target balanced circular economy development, engaging all levels of society and not just industry. Targeting metric best practice will enhance data for economic case for circular economy, which is very important. Ensuring indicators are mutually exclusive and cumulatively exhaustive will help ensure attached goals are achieved rather than deviated. Granular detail, both at the local level in terms of breadth of metrics, is rare and should be targeted as a best practice. Future inclusion of innovation metrics in national roadmaps could improve the concreteness of national roadmaps, learning from city level roadmaps. Finally, emphasis on stakeholder engagement will ensure that indicators are relevant and realistic, and stakeholders are key to developing functional, feasible roadmaps and accompanying metrics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arpit, for a very comprehensive presentation. It's really fascinating to understand the different stages that countries are at. And so we really appreciate you taking the time to joining this webinar and explaining the different approach in terms of indicators. We really like what you say about the relationship between national and provincial or local circular economy roadmap and how this can learn from each other. And this is really very relevant for Vietnam, where a number of cities and provinces are also in this process of formulating the circular economy roadmap. So thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to invite our attendees and participants to please ask questions in the Q&A box for Arpit and for the other speakers. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Carlo Lupi, who is a senior expert working with UNDP in formulating the circular economy roadmap. So Mr. Carlo Lupi is going to share a proposed approach and indicator for the map on circular economy. So Carlo, the floor is yours and you have 15 minutes. I will be very strict with the time. Apologies in advance. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. And can you hear me? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you, we can see you, and you can share your screen.
Okay, I will share my screen now. Let me open the presentation. Yes, it's already open. So with my presentation today, I will try to enter some specific aspect of the selection of indicators for the National Action Plan in Vietnam. Let me put that in the presentation modality.
I think it's the icon at the bottom of the screen, right? We wish we can help you, but it's in Italian.
Yes. Okay.
Perfect.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, all good. Thank you very much, Carlo.
Thanks a lot. So let me, because time is very short, let me try to be quick. My presentation, as I said, I would like to propose some approach and some ideas on how to select indicative indicators, quantitative indicators on circular economy to be included in the National Action Plan currently under development. In this first slide, I'd like to talk about measurement. Measurement of circular economy is a strange thing, actually, because measurement usually, I mean, we are very familiar with measurement of, for instance, physical quantities or even monetary quantities. However, circular economy is neither a purely scientific or economic concept. And it's interesting to see that, for instance, some article classified more than 100 different definitions of circular economy. So it's sometimes it's difficult to understand what actually circular economy is. Another aspect is that we should try to escape is the attempt to drive the measurement of circular economy toward a perfect circularity of materials. In this, in the right side of my slide, you may see the flowchart for PET recycling. PET recycling, as many people know, is one of the most efficient recycling process, but still it requires a lot of energy. It requires materials like water and detergent. So in the end, even this process is not perfectly circular, and we have to take into account the inputs of energy and material. But perfect circularity can be approached by using, for instance, even in the recycling process, renewable energy, or by recycling the material itself used for the recycling. So, and this is why it is important to consider not only the material flow of recycling waste, but also the energy flow. There are many social aspects in circular economy, but one of the most known aspects is that reuse is probably the most efficient way for achieving perfect circularity, but at the same time, it is affected by a number of social issues, as it may hinder the production chain. So sometimes there is a lot of discussion, for instance, in Italy, the reuse approach on and the avoiding of single-use plastic has been disputed by the Industrial Association. So let me say a bit more on the theoretical side. What is circular economy? There are many, I would say that each country has its own idea of the economy, and even with time, the economy might change. For instance, in Europe, the principle of the economy has been modified to face the pandemic. So economy is basically tailored by the objective of the country. So in general, circular economy, we may say that it's an economic model And this is important to stress that circular economy is an economic model which is driven by environmental rules. We have obviously in Vietnam a definition of circular economy under the Law of Environmental Protection, Article 142. The definition in Vietnam is that circular economy is an economic model which encompasses design, production, consumption, and services activities aimed at reducing raw material, extending product life, reducing waste generation, and minimize adverse impact on the environment. So those are the rules of the economic model. Another important thing that we have to remember is that if we measure the efficiency of an economy in a country, we are obviously tempted to use the GDP approach, but comparing linear economy with circular economy might be misleading, as circular economy is by definition an economy which internalizes environmental cost, whilst the linear economy doesn't. So we should compare the two economies by using the same approach, which is at this stage extremely complicated, because either we change the GDP approach of the linear economy or we adopt a very sophisticated approach for circular economy to get the same measurement. What we can do then is not to measure the efficiency of the circular economy in terms of GDP, but the achievement of the goals. So, for instance, the achievement of reducing raw material, extending product life, reducing waste generation, minimize adverse impact on the environment. And this is what is currently proposed under the National Action Plan and is under discussion. In this slide, what I did is to summarize the current proposals, let's say, of the indicators for the National Action Plan in Vietnam. As I say, this slide summarizes even the definition of the law. Here we have the 4 objectives of circular economy based on the definition of the law under the law of environmental protection. And here the sector, design, production, consumption, and service activities. So there are already a number of indicators proposed in the draft National Action Plan. Obviously, I cannot say that the indicators listed here are the ones proposed by the National Action Plan, because this is still under discussion. But let's say that more or less the National Action Plan is going in a direction like that. So we have a number of indicators related to the design. For instance, indicators 1 is the percentage of products designed for reduced material consumption and efficiency. Indicators 2 is a percentage of products designed for extended product life, and so on. Or, for instance, indicator 9 is a percentage of products and packaging material collected and recycled in compliance with EPR, or the 5, 6, 7, and 8 related to the reducing raw material consumption. We will discuss a bit more about that, and so on. And as of now, the National Action Plan, the draft National Action Plan, is not yet deciding a quantitative target, but we can identify for each indicator whether we want an increase to increase circular economy or a reduction. For instance, the rate of energy consumption per unit of gross domestic product is to be reduced to enhance the circularity of the country. Another important aspect, maybe the most important aspect, is whether to, whether to gather information. We have currently a number of international and national sources, obviously. For instance, the OECD have a very detailed database on material consumption and other parameters, and also published a list of circular economy indicators adopted by all the OECD member states. So that's a very important source of data. The International Energy Agency on data related to energy. And one very important thing, for instance, is the database under the United Nations on the Sustainable Development Goals. These Sustainable Development Goals, some of them are indeed very relevant for the circular economy, and the United Nations maintain a database of indicators and data to feed some indicators. At national level, obviously, the General Statistics Office of Vietnam is the reference for data generation, but there are also very useful data on the generated by the Vietnam Institute of Energy and the national, for instance, the National Energy Efficiency Program released Vietnam Energy Statistics 2020. There are more limited data, for instance, on water. And this is one of the aspects that maybe will need to be improved. But in general, ministries, line ministries, and the agencies under each ministry have the task to generate the data to allow that ministry to achieve their missions. So data are more or less there, but circular economy requires a change of perspective, and for sure there is the need to improve the collection of data and the, let's say, even the way data are processed to have useful data for the measurement of circular economy. So now, very shortly, I'm trying to illustrate some potential indicators under the National Action Plan and their current status. So I'm not only trying to define indicators, but I'd like also to show, based on such indicators, where Vietnam is going in terms of circularity. For instance, this is, I saw that indicator listed also under the presentation of Mr. Botani, the ratio of renewable electric energy ratio, which is the renewable energy consumed over the total energy consumed in a country. Here is the simplified formula. Let's say that the final formula for these indicators. And if we, the data here are from the Vietnam Institute of Energy, so 2015-2020. If we look at the calculation, we may see that indeed there was a decrease in renewable energy from the year 2015 to 2020, which was mostly attributed to the increase in fossil fuel generated electricity. It's different if we remove the hydro generated electricity, taking into the picture only solar and wind, and we may appreciate that there was quite a steep increase in the generation of solar and wind in the last few years. The absolute amount of solar and wind electricity, however, is still quite low, even if it is increasing. Another important indicator is the consumption of renewable materials and minerals. Here, obviously, we have to select which materials we want to include in this indicator. For instance, one of the proposals for the National Action Plan is to consider only materials generated from mining activities. Here, instead, I'm reporting the data calculated on the basis of the OECD data, and making the calculation in two ways. One way is per GDP unit, and another way is per capita. If we look at the consumption of overall consumption of material per GDP unit in the last 20 years, we may see that apparently there was a decrease in that consumption. So less material is required to generate one GDP unit. But if we look at the amount, the red line of material used per capita, we may see quite a steep increase of this in the last year. Obviously, if we use the GDP approach, this entails a number of issues like the relative ratio of price of the materials within the basket, or even the partial dematerialization of the economy, which is shifting a bit more towards service and so on. So maybe by per capita is a more reliable indicator. Another indicator here, that's a very important indicator for Vietnam, is the withdrawal of renewable water resources. Vietnam is perceived as a country which is very rich of water, but indeed, based on the studies from ADB, Asian Development Bank, supported by the Asian Development Bank in 2009, and another study from the Hanoi University, it seems that the situation is not that satisfactory for two reasons. One reason is that 60% of water is actually, of fresh water is actually coming from international waters, not from Vietnam waters. And there are a number of issues related to the depletion of water resources by pollution and by excessive withdrawal. But what is important to say here is that this indicator is actually the indicators proposed under the Sustainable Development Goal 6.4.2. This indicator tracks how much fresh water is being withdrawn by all economic activities compared to the total renewable freshwater resource available, after taking into account environmental flow requirements. And in general, is thought that when a territory withdraws 25% or more of its renewable freshwater resources, it is said to be water stressed. Now, unfortunately for Vietnam, we have only one figure, which is related to the year 2020, and that figure is 18%. So it's quite a, let's say, reassuring figure. Is quite good that we are still under 25%, but still we have to remember that 6% of water comes from international sources, not from water generated in Vietnam. So that means that
Carlo,
yes, sure.
Really sorry to interrupt you. You just have 2 minutes left to wrap up the presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, I will finish in 2 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, I have only 2 slides. Another indicator is environmental impact, air quality emissions. I'm not discussing about water quality because obviously we don't have time, but the situation is the same. To how to relate air quality to the economy. Obviously, the most obvious indicator is by calculating the greenhouse gas emission per capita per GDP. We have a similar situation compared to other indicators. When we consider per capita, we see that in Vietnam, the greenhouse gas emission increased quite a lot from from the year 2000, 5 times more now than the year 2000. So that means that Vietnam is running away from circularity in this field. The picture is a bit better if we consider these indicators compared to GDP, but again, this might be due to the partial dematerialization of the economy. I will conclude this quick overview of some indicators on the generation and recycling of solid waste. I will say that unfortunately, the statistics of waste generation in Vietnam is still quite poor and incomplete. We do have data on the generation of waste, mostly municipal waste, but we have incomplete data on waste recycling, which is limited to very few types of recyclables. We have no regular information related to the generation of waste by category. But still, on the basis of data elaboration based on the Vietnam state of the environment, we may see the picture that we already saw for the other indicators, that when we compare to the population, the rate of waste generation increased, whilst if we compare that to the GDP, we have a decrease or a stable situation. So just to conclude, I will say that I'm not thinking that measuring and monitoring circular economy entail revolutionary or very innovative methods. It requires the use of existing data sources with a different perspective, and the measurement may be largely based on indicators used in other fields, but still one of the main challenges actually the collection of reliable information. In terms of what we saw, the data trends of the few indicators assessed, although based on a very quick survey, confirm that Vietnam is currently moving toward the increased consumption of resources of energy and the increased generation of waste per capita, whilst the decrease of all these parameters when normalized to the GDP seems to testify moderate dematerialization of the Vietnamese economy in the last 10 years, which, however, doesn't necessarily means increased circularity. That's all from my side, and thanks a lot for your attention. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you very much, Carlo, for this very insightful presentation. I wish we had more time. Once again, I would like to invite colleagues to please share your question in the Q&A box. So thank you, Carlo, for taking us through the example of some of the proposed indicators. So as you can see, the scope is extremely wide, from the renewable energy sources, from the withdrawal of natural resources such as water, as well as solid waste generation, or the negative consequences of the current linear economy related, for instance, to air pollution. So thank you very much, Carlo, for this great presentation. And now we are going to move to our third speaker. I would like to invite Mr. Hideki Wada-san. Hideki Wada is a solid waste consultant with more than 40 years of experience. He extensively contributed to solid waste management planning in Vietnam and is a certified consulting engineer recognized by the Japanese government. So for this final presentation, we will hear from Mr. Wada-san, the presentation looking at the material flow analysis and how the use of this approach has helped to inform the Japanese policy. So, Mr. Wada-san, the floor is yours. So we can see you and we can see your screen. And when you're ready, please can you unmute yourself?
Can you see?
Yes, we can see you. We can hear you
Okay.
as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Mugane. My name is Hideki Wada, Japanese consultant on solid waste management, but I'm staying in Hanoi to work for Vietnam as a member director of the Vietnam Waste Planning based in Hanoi. Now our company is supporting ISPONDE to formulate NAP on CE under JICA project. In this work, we discussed what kind of indicators can be come up with to Vietnam. So today I will introduce those kind of indicators which we are going to use based on the Japanese experience. Before introducing the our proposal regarding the indicators, I will explain the Japanese indicators used in Japan. This is, I think that Japan started the circular economy policies since 2000, coming up with the several recycling laws for several specific goods, products, as you can see in the bottom. As well as the Green Purchasing Act was enacted in 2000. And one more act was added just last year. It was for the Plastic Recycling Promotion Act. Based on those laws, this is the basic indicators used in Japan, composed of three major basic indicators. One is the resource productivity as the input evaluation, and recycling rate in the middle inner side. And as the output side, we use amount of landfill waste. And actually, these three basic indicators related to the material flow is quite well monitored with the specific targets. And achievement is very well or be achieved toward the targets set by the government. And this is an example of another indicator. These are the trend change of the indicator of the collection rate for e-wastes. E-waste, you can find the e-waste name here, starting from washing machine, the highest, refrigerator, TV, and air conditioner here. The lowest one is air conditioner, and unfortunately, the reason why the collection rate for air conditioner is quite low is majorly I can address to 2 points. One is that due to the definition of the indicator, because the collection rate is defined as collected unit divided by supplied unit in the year. So, like air conditioner, which is not penetrated well or not saturated products like air conditioner, for this kind of products, the collection rate would be lower than the actual. And another reason to consider is due to the high economic value of the air conditioner, the waste flow leaked from the official recycling route would be not negligible. there are a lot of parts dealt by private company out of official recycling route. Actually, this is a material flow for air conditioner. You can find here, this is the official recycling part to be dealt by controlled under the government. And remaining part is the private part for air conditioner. For example, here, I'm sorry, so many Japanese, but I put the English tentative translation here. So could you please refer to the English part? Here you can find the reuse part, not the small part, very huge for air conditioner, and also some scrap of air conditioner is dealt by private company and used domestically and internationally exported. That's why the collection rate for air conditioner is exceptionally very low compared with other e-waste. And I want to introduce another example of material flow for PET bottle in 2021. This is drawn by the Industrial Association for PET. The material flow PET bottle was drawn, developed by the periodically by the Industrial Association. And also, this is an example for aluminum can, also developed by the Industrial Aluminum Recycling Association of Japan. So one of the highlighted point of Japan is not only the basic total flow, which is expressed by the three basic indicators, but also the material flows by products are drawn and utilized. And also, it is one of the highlighted point that kind of material flows are developed together, collaborating with the Industrial Association for the discussion with the government. Based on these Japanese experiences, we discussed what kind of indicators would be suitable for Vietnam. Actually, the purpose to develop the indicators which I'm introducing was developed for screening the priority sector, focal sector, important sector to address in the first term to implement. But I think these indicators would be applicable to as monitoring and evaluation indicators. The first thing we did was to draw the basic material flow model referring to the Japanese experience by products, basic flow by products. You can find the model here. This part, RP, is upper part explaining the production part, and the lower part expresses the consumption part. In the production part, of course, industrial waste will be generated, but some industrial waste will be returned to the production line. For example, glass bottle production will generate the production loss of glass bottle. Those glass bottles will be utilized again by inputting to the furnace of the glass bottle. And also the interlocking block loss waste can be returned to the production loss again. And also, many industrial waste are utilized as cascade recycling. Cascade recycling means the different from the returning to the production line can be called as closed loop recycling. This cascade recycling, the material are used for recycled as another purpose, not different from the original usage. And also the this from the consumption part, the waste will be generated, and some recyclables waste, domestic waste, will be returned to the production line, to the same production line. For example, grass after drinking beer will be returned to the grass production as a utilization of grass cullet. And also paper after consumption will be returned to the paper mill company. So paper will be reborn as a paper. Glass will be reborn as a glass. So it is a kind of good example of the closed loop recycling after consumption. And also in the same way as the production part, the many of the products after consumed will be utilized for another purpose of recycling, what is called as the cascade recycling for the recyclables. And also one of the unique characteristics in the consumption part is the reuse part. For example, you can find easily some examples of reuse. But for example, refillable bottle, glass bottle can be used for drinking bottles again. And also your second-hand clothes can be given to others and sold in the flea market, like that. So reuse part also one of the very important part of the circular economy promotion. And this material flow can be drawn by these equations, and we could find the only 11 parameters we can draw this kind of material flow for all products, for byproducts. And by using this kind of symbols, we can define the proposed indicators based on referring to the decree number 8, which defines the circular economy of Vietnam. One is a raw material consumption, MR, you can find here MR, divided by M plus DS. M plus DS expresses the total material input to Vietnam. Of course, there are some duplication material weight between M and DS. But the reason why I use the M plus DS as the material input is, by using this M plus DS, we can consider both production part as M, after consumption part DS, also can be considered in this can be considered as the total material used in Vietnam. By considering also the DS, even though there are duplication, we can consider the import and export part to be import and export part. Then we can consider the real domestic input to Vietnam, different from production part. Okay, second one is the socio-economic metabolization part. The WP and WC divided by M plus DS was tentatively used because we couldn't find any good indicators so far for this socio-economic metabolization. Because if we evaluate this product is metabolized and this product is not metabolized, then we need the standard value of the used amount for one product. But such kind of standard value cannot be found. So we considered the WP and WC is residue waste amount generated from Vietnam socioeconomic society. Then if this part is not negligible, then the material used in Vietnam would be a lot of rooms to improve. Tentatively, we used this kind of indicator. And the third one is very easy to understand. It is circularity, or recycled material divided by the input. And the fourth one is also very easy to understand. Environmental load from one product divided by the total environmental load generated from the product. And also finally, as integrated indicator, we added the circular economy rate, circularity divided by RMC, SEM, ER. RMC must be smaller in the future. SEM must be smaller also. Circularity must be larger in the future. And the environmental load must be smaller in the future. So what will be resulted in the circularity, if we can control these indicators in that kind of direction, then this circular economy rate will be higher.
Mr. Wada-san, you have just a few minutes left, please. Could we maybe move to your proposed indicators? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It is impossible to draw that kind of material flow for all material flows. So we limited to several products, considering the sharing rate in the Vietnamese market. Surprisingly, only 19 products can explain the 90% of all material flow input to Vietnamese. And I didn't forget to add the EPR targets stipulated by the decree number 8. And finally, we listed 44 products, and we drawed all for these 44 materials, products, this kind of material flow for each. This is an example of a PET bottle. We draw current material flow as well as the future target, how to change this material flow for PET bottle. Then the indicators can be improved from like this to like this. And circular economy improvement potentiality defined by this can be calculated for all products. And I ordered in accordance with the circular potentiality defined like this. The top one, stone followed, second one, vehicle. And surprisingly, fourth one was public. Those ones is very easy to challenge, to improve. And also, if we can divide it, those products, targeted products, into two parts. One is products to be challenged in the first term, and the second term. Then the circularity change can be drawn like this in a milestone. Also, the total material flow can be drawn by aggregating the all material flows written, drawn for the all target material. And also from that kind of material flow, we can screen out the policy options. By other words, what we should do for those kind of products to improve towards the circular economy, like this. Okay, my conclusion is that even simple material flow, basic material flow, as I explained, very important, because data availability is not expected too much in Vietnam. So that kind of material flow must be developed for the discussion among related agencies, especially between government and the industrial sector. But also we have to, even though it is, it should be the simple model, but we have to, don't forget, we don't have to forget the functions to be deployed for those kind of basic material flow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We went into some quite technical details and discussion around the formula, but this is our aim and objective to understand today where those indicators come from and to present the different approaches, so be it the material flow analysis that help to drive the formulation of the circular economy in Japan. You also heard from Carlo is more looking from a systemic perspective at socioeconomic indicators, GDP, air pollution, and we also heard from Arpit that there are many different ways of formulating circular economy roadmap, including for some countries having very general indicators. So of course, in Vietnam, we know how important is the MNE framework. We also know that we are facing challenges related to the collection of data, the analysis of data, and to the sharing of data between different departments. So all of these constraints have to be taken into consideration as we move forward with the formulation of the NAPs. So once again, we would like to warmly thank our three speakers for the very insightful presentation. There has been a lot of discussion happening in the Q&A already. We have 15 minutes left to hear from your question. So please, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question to the speaker directly or make a comment, or you're also welcome to type it in the chat. So over to you, over to the audience and the participants. Thank you very much. Okay, so if we don't receive a question directly, maybe we would like to ask a question to Mr. Carlo first. So what do you consider are the primary challenges in collecting the data for the National Action Plan on Circular Economy, and what would be your recommendation in order to overcome those challenges? It's a broad question, but we would be very grateful if you could try to respond within a few minutes, so we can go through other questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Yes, indeed, it's not only a very broad question, but I think it's the question of the questions, because the collection of data is the challenge for circular economy, because in many sectors actually we are lacking data. So one of the, I think we can see this issue from let's say two sides. One side is that the regulator that is developing the circular economy should make very clear what are the needs in terms of data requirement, because this is the only way we may ask data generator to provide information in the format we need for circular economy. One example, when I try to make some, as you saw, initial estimates, obviously there is the language barrier for me, but I realized that it's not easy to get information about consumption of materials in Vietnam. We can get information about production of materials. This is very easily found in the General Statistic Office of Vietnam, but consumption is a different way, and actually we need to information about consumption for assessing circular economy. So this is just one example. We have to be very clear with which kind of data we need. The other thing is that there is a lot of needs for capacity building. For instance, recycling, information about recycling of waste is generated at the local level in provinces and municipalities, and very often they either don't have the capacity of collection this information, or they use different approaches and so on. Not to speak about the fact that the collection itself, the collection recycling itself is difficult. And in Vietnam, another very important aspect is the fact that a lot of recycling is carried out by under informal organizations. And obviously, informal organization won't share data, if any, with you. So this the collection of data is something which is not just, let's say, paperwork. Is something that has to go straight to the society, to talk to the society in terms of administrations, in terms of community, and to raise the awareness about these aspects, and to change the, let's say, the behavior of not only people but also the administrator to take care of the information, because information is actually the most precious resource we have for ensuring the circular economy. So I will talk for one day about that, but this is really the most important thing in circular economy: collection of data. I cannot hear you.
Thank you for your response, Carlo. This is very complete, very comprehensive. So we have a question for Mr. Wada-san. So as you clearly explained in your presentation, Japan has put an emphasis on the use of material flow to guide the formulation of city policy. Could you please share what are the lessons learned that you can draw from the Japanese experience and that could be useful for Vietnam? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Before answering to your question, I want to have a comment on the Carlos-san's reply to the Morgan-san's question. I think that, of course, production is known by the GSO in Vietnam, but the natural resource input is not known. But in my material balance used in material flow, I consider the production minus recycled material can be considered as tentatively as natural resource input in material resource balance. So due to the lack of the data availability, this kind of estimation or calculation could be very practical, I believe. Just comment to your idea. We need the one day discussion for this kind of issue. So I just wanted to touch this one. And coming back to the Morgan-san's question, first, in Japan, not only total material flow, but also the material flow by products is drawn. That's one of the very important point, I believe. Based on that sharing, I want to address 3 lessons from Japan. One is material flow is a very basic instrument to discuss how to improve that kind of material flow based on the current material flow like this. So how do you want to change this material flow toward the future? Such kind of discussion can be possible, is possible based on the material flow. And next, second one is material flow can visualize the current recycling situation and the amount of waste, and as well as production or related matters. And based on the visualized fact, the government and industrial sector can discuss with each other how to collaborate for their each role. by other words, the material flow can be used as a communication tool between the government and industrial tool, as we do in Japan. And also, one additional comment on the material flow of Japan. As you can see, the material flow of Japan is focusing on the downstream only. But as I explained for the proposed indicator to Vietnam, if we consider the upstream material flow into the additionally to the downstream material flow, then we can discuss together what to be done in the upstream. For example, how the extension of the product life affects the downstream, or how does the design for environment in the upstream may affect to the downstream, like that. So the based on the lesson, the final one is the additional proposal, which we considered when we proposed to Vietnam. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wadasan. I just would like to give the opportunity to Mr. Arpit. You've been sharing many different case studies from many different countries. Would you like to maybe share one final word or one example of a country which you believe would be relevant and useful for Vietnam? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Yeah, in fact, if you see in the presentation which I mentioned, most of the countries that are that have developed their circular economy roadmaps are in the global north, where there is a lot of data, and it's easier to develop indicators and measure and do the metric analysis. So in that case, I think the only closest example I can think of, and it's cannot be replicated fully, is Colombia in South America, which has similar levels of development and has actually solved the problem of data issue during their metrics and indicators assessments. So that, but at the same time, while during the roadmap process, they did solve it, they are having some real tough issues in the implementation as well. So therefore, I would say that Vietnam is one of the front runners to solve this problem in the global south, where there is a data problem and there is a big informal economy that has to be factored in circular economy. So that is a challenge. I think Vietnam will create a best practice in this process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your response. And it is clear that Vietnam is the front runner in the formulation of circular economic policy. And as everyone is also well aware, with the agreement on the Just Energy Transition Partnership, we know that eyes will be put in Vietnam as the country is really accelerating its efforts, both on the climate and on the circular economy front, which are, of course, very much linked. So thank you very much to all of our panelists. We're very delighted to have the chance and opportunity to hear from you and for you to take the time to share your insights with us. I also would like to express my great appreciation for the leadership and effort of our colleagues from East Conway. And also we would like to thank Norway and the Embassy of the Netherlands for their generous support and generous financial and technical support to the development of the Vietnam Circular Economy Hub. So the next webinar will be looking at the tools to finance the transition toward the circular economy in Vietnam. It will take place on the 29th of June. And the third one, as mentioned, will explore the circular economy transition of cities in July. So thank you very much to all participants, and Sinkaman.